Alan, I thought we could start here. So we're finding you kind of at the tail end of training camp. Over the course of your career, what are some things that you've learned to maybe not focus on so much in training camp? And not to say that they're not important, but just parts of your team game or perhaps individual development where you say, hey, that's best served once we get the season rolling.
Yeah, I mean, I think over the years, when you first get involved and you first get the head coach's role in Owen Sound, or when I first come to Sarnia, you want to make this giant first impression, and camp is so focused on, structured. How do we get our forecheck down? How do we get our D zone down? What are we doing through the neutral zone? You want to look like you're so structured in those exhibition games. And I think over the years with the staff I've had and talking to some other coaches at all these conferences, it's the habits that we really focus on now. So we've come up with the ten winning habits we thought fit our team, fit our structure, fit our identity, and now we hammer those with video, we hammer those in our practices, and that's kind of been the point moving forward, telling them that, hey, you're gonna make a mistake on the forecheck, you're gonna miss a coverage in the D zone, but these habits are what we're gonna build on. And then as we get on the same page, when our team gets together a little bit more, we get to practice more, we're gonna have those habits down, and now we can stick to the structure.
It's funny. We were just on a call, like literally right before this, with an American League coach who's we were reviewing a presentation he's doing for us at an event, and he was talking about that one of the biggest challenges is at the NHL level, for example, um, you don't have to worry so much about players making a mistake and then putting them right back out there. Like it's very much a win now league. But how have you learned that when players make mistakes to set them up for success, that next shift or that next opportunity that they have? How do you learn
Yeah.
from it?
Oh, I think it's just the important to get a quick touch when they come off the ice, whether it's through me, through one of my assistants, or a quick touch when we go in between periods. It might be, hey, don't worry about that. I'll show you what happened in between periods. Just pop into the office. We'll go through it. We'll talk it out. But I think when they come back, they're so at times so hard on themselves, and they come back to the bench, and that one moment defines their game through the rest of that period, and they get so focused on it that their whole game falls apart. It's more like, you know what, let it go. Or hey, now that we have all the technology and they have an iPad, it's like, hey, take a quick look where your feet are pointing, or look where your stick was, or you're not even in the right spot because you're F3. And then they can kind of let it go a little bit quicker and get out and focus on that next shift. So we've done a real good job of really trying to stay on top of that, just the small stuff in a positive way, because again, like I said, they're so competitive now, these kids, and they're hard on themselves when they make that mistake, because they think, oh, there goes my shift, or there goes my period.
I had a conversation recently with somebody, and it kind of went to a direction of how sports has changed or how athletes have changed, and they made a really interesting comment. They said, "You know what?" They're like, "Aaron, did your parents go to your hockey practices?" And I had to think about it. I'm like, I don't think so. I don't think like I'm
I
pretty sure my
know.
mom went grocery shopping, or it
Yeah.
never even occurred to me.
No.
And he's like, well, yeah, neither did my parents. He's like, they dropped me off the rink and they picked me up. He said these kids today grow up, their parents go to, like, they go to the practices, and because they go to the practices, it's assumed, well, if I'm here, I might as well have an opinion on what's going on, whether it's how my kid's doing or what the coach is doing. And he just talked about the compounding effect that by the kids get to you, they're just used to they're under a microscope
Yeah.
nonstop. Um, is there, when you're dealing with athletes today, is that, I guess, that tool of, hey, we're gonna teach you how to forecheck. We're also gonna teach you how to live with mistakes and grow from them.
Yeah, I think looking at it like that, I look back to, and I think my dad, yeah, dropped me off, or my mom was busy probably working a night shift, and I got to practice with a friend and did it. Um, I was fortunate enough when I was playing in Europe and our kids were born, I was free and I had the opportunity to go to some of those practices, and I'd get out a little bit, but it was still the same thing. Like, you want to focus on your son or your daughter so much, and then you've got all these other kids. So they were under a little bit of a microscope, and our kids are, especially the kids from Ontario, because their parents are at every game, road games, home
Never
games,
thought of that.
everything.
I mean, yeah,
The Western League kids are a little bit different, right? Their travel's a little bit more, and so after every game, I give my message at the end of the game. They shower, they work out a little bit, they go up to see their parents, and their parents are dissecting that game for them right away in a positive way, or in, who knows how much the influence is. And it's a fine line with myself and Dylan and Mark, is trying to break a little bit of the independence for them. Like, hey, take stock in your own game first, or come in and let's chat a little bit about if you feel you're really down. And then at least when you go, you have a little bit of a more adult conversation with your parents or your dad or your agent that's there, and you can say, you know what, yeah, I had some bad shifts, or I didn't play very well, but the coach left me with this message, or the coach left me with that message, saying, you know what, the last 3 games I was really good, and now this is just maybe a one-off, or I got to work a little harder, or something. So I think that becomes very important for them.
I think that's great advice. That particularly at the youth level, is really well served. When you're in the game and there's so much going on, and I would assume there's three of you behind the bench, and you talk about those moments where whether it's because a mistake was made or maybe something good happened, but in terms of how you communicate with the players, do you have any sort of I guess process or system amongst the staff to say, hey, here's how we're going to take stock of the conversations we have to have on the bench, or maybe what, that one needs to happen in intermission, or what, nope, that one's a after the game, or nope, that's a in practice tomorrow, but just to make sure that you get all those touches in and that players feel seen.
Yeah, I think that's the fun part about getting to know your staff. And if you have the opportunity to work with your staff for multiple years, right? You just almost get that connection where you're on the bench, something happens, you both look at each other, and you try not to do a quick eye roll, but he knows already, okay, I'm going to tuck to him here, or I'll write something down on a card and then show one of my assistants and be like, hey, let's touch on that between periods. And it's getting in that sync. And I think, for coaching and coaches and staffs, it's, you need to get together a little bit, break down games together through the summer, especially if you have a new staff, and get on the same page. And the verbiage needs to be very similar, how we approach that. But I think that's important, and it's one of the biggest things I learned through Hockey Canada. It's one of the biggest things I've learned the last few years, where we've had a little bit of movement in the staff, and it's, you got to get on the same page as quick as you can. And it's finding that synergy between the three of you guys.
How do you come to alignment? And again, just maybe kind of timely. We released a video today with Catherine Hickman, who I think you were down in Ann Arbor,
Hmm.
the Cleveland Browns assistant GM, and
Yes.
she talked about alignment and just how important that is in the process you go through. Like, how does that? What does that look like, or maybe what specifically as a staff would you say that, hey, like if there's three areas that we need to be totally in sync on, like what are those?
Yeah, I think it's, that's a good one. I think it's how in sync you are, but again, the importance of, um, the communication, the open communication. And I'm a huge collaborator. I love sitting around at the end of the game, or a little bit between periods, or before a game, and just, talking hockey, talking situations that may come up in that game, and then be like, hey, 5-on-3 penalty. We're already in sync. We know what we're gonna do when you call that timeout. Stuff's already written on the board, so it's not like a panic. It's like, take a deep breath, let the kids relax, because if we're scribbling like crazy on the board, they're sensing the urgency, that kind of stuff. So it's the open collaboration, knowing that my assistants, my GM, my ownership, we can have those tough conversations in the coaches room, and at the end of the day, it's on me to decipher the information and try and implement it when I'm on the bench. And I think that's become real important. Just, bringing up scenarios, bringing up events that may happen in a game. Knock on wood. When do I want to pull my goalie? And I sometimes I'll go down and ask my assistant, what are you thinking? Do we pull him now? Do we let him play one more? How's the team feeling? Or
Yeah.
sending in just an assistant between periods, that, maybe a period hasn't gone well, and they're just waiting for me to walk in that door and yell, or walk in the door and say something, and then all of a sudden just one assistant goes in and goes, guys, like, here's the message. Let's go change this or that. So I think it's those tough conversations that become so valuable as a staff.
I think too. Have you ever seen the NFL Films documentary "Do Your Job" on the Patriots?
No, I haven't.
Yeah, we'd highly recommend. Well, obviously the NFL,
Definitely.
they record everything, everything's mic'd up, but it's
Yeah.
like you can see like in real time, like Bill Belichick, something happens in a game, and he goes to one of his assistants, like, "Hey, like we're gonna need a field goal. Make sure you go talk to him about the field." And he just that situational
Yeah.
football in your case hockey, just saying like, "Hey, make sure we get this ready. We might get a 5-on-3," and I think so much of I sense that a head coach's role now is to maybe delegate those responsibilities versus feeling like they have to be the one that sends the message all the time.
Yeah, there's so many moving parts now, and football would be crazy the staff you're dealing with. At
Can't
least with
imagine.
hockey, it's just a couple, but the game is so fast now, and situations happen so quick that I can't prepare for everyone, or I try and prepare as much as you can on your coach's card, but it's building that trust with your two assistants that they're comfortable to come down the bench and be like, hey. We missed that matchup for a second. You're like, you know what? We did. I was talking to, so and so on the bench, or I was writing something on my card and I missed something for a sec. Hey, and they're comfortable enough to step in and kind of realign the staff or realign what we're doing on the bench. And I think we're in that process now. It's training camp for us. We've got to get to that point with my two new assistants, Braden and Mason. So that's the fun part, right? You sit in that coach's room and you talk shop for hours.
Oh man, I miss that. I miss that.
I know.
Um, I read an article that through I think it was your first 4 games in training camp that your group was demonstrating a lot of truculence, and I think it's always interesting in our sport in particular where a coach will on one hand preach don't get pushed around, stand up for each other, and they'll applaud that, but then they'll also say stay disciplined, don't take penalties. And I just have always appreciated that is a really hard thing to articulate exactly where that line is and how to walk it. So I throw to you, how do you communicate to your team or define that line?
Yeah, it is such a fine line, especially when you're dealing with, 16 to 20-year-olds. It's the last thing you ever want to do is put one of them in an uncomfortable position at their age. I think it started back when we ended the season last year. We were disappointed we didn't make the playoffs. We have some exit meetings. We sit down with our leadership group, and we had a young team last year. We had, Ryan Brown was a 17-year-old and he wore a letter. We had Lucas Fisher, who was an 18-year-old that was still fairly young, a little bit immature in kind of the OHL standards, where he wasn't a 19-year-old, he wasn't a 20-year-old, hadn't played in a while. So we were very young. And when we were talking on those exit meetings, we kind of sum up the season, and they're like, when the game got hard, when the game was tight, teams could lean on us. The older teams would lean on us and push us around a little bit. And they said, next year we don't want to be like that. We want to be able to stand up for each other as a group of five, and just play hard between the whistles, and finish checks when we needed to. And so we took the summer and we started to kind of build how we were going to kind of make this work for us. And it was defining what it meant to stick up for your teammate, right? If you were comfortable going over and being a little bit more aggressive, then you would go over and be a little bit more aggressive. If you weren't, that was all right. We would just find ways inside the game to kind of chip away at that moment, right? So if one of our best players gets hit hard and we don't have someone on the ice that's maybe comfortable doing something, it's like, hey, as a group, guys, we're going to finish a check on that guy every time. After every whistle, we're just going to be around letting them know that we're aware of what happened. And I think they've kind of taken it personal now going through, and we're
Yeah.
going to have to define what it is when you're going to hurt the team because you're crossing the line, which has happened a few times in chime in camp. And then we have to be willing to talk about it and have the conversations going, hey, this kind of stuff hurts us because now they get the power play. They've already got the momentum from maybe what's happened on the ice. They've got the power play now. This might be the defining moment in the game where we win, where we lose. Remember, we might play them again down the road, right? We've got another period. So just stay within ourselves and kind of play. And then it's just showing little clips of video when someone does it right. It's like down the road, like, hey, look at this right here. This is what we're talking about. We can still make an impact. You can still send a message by playing this way, period to period. And then lastly, we put it into what our team values were this year. Our team values were relentless, selfless, respect, and ownership. So we can kind of manipulate the wording with that and be like, hey, you take a bad penalty because you're emotionally going after someone, right? Take ownership of it, but it hurts the team, so it's not a not the right way we want to do it. It doesn't respect, the group. We also want to respect our opponent, but we still have to be able to play hard because it's about winning at our level now.
No doubt. And you mentioned, you had a younger group last year. There's obviously a cyclical nature to junior hockey. Um, what might be some layers that you look to add to your team this year that maybe just over the that 30,000 foot view of team building that happens over, say, a 3 year period versus just a singular season, to say, okay, now we're ready to really focus on these areas where perhaps we were focused on more of the foundational or building blocks.
Yeah, like I think yes, like the first little bit it was understanding the league for all the young guys, understanding the other team's 20-year-olds that were maybe more physical, and understanding who the better players are. Now they're moving forward. Now we just adapt their game prep to really buying into how you're going to beat that 20-year-old defenseman as an 18-year-old now, dealing with the pressure of the draft coming up, dealing with now the expectations for a Beckham Edwards, a Diorio, who have first round potential, second high pick potential. How are they going to deal with that pressure? How are we going to help them as a group deal with that pressure? And now we get into sync a little bit more, and it's more of a team ownership, as a group of five. And then, you know, empowering our older guys. Lucas Fisher is coming back in his fourth year now, and he's gone to two NHL camps. What's he bringing back from St. Louis that he can help direct our young group? And now another year for that leadership group, another year of more mature. Can you hold the room a little bit more accountable now that you're a year older? It's easier
Yeah.
as an 18-year-old and 19-year-old to say something, where if you're a 17-year-old and you've got to tell a 19-year-old, we don't play that way, or your practice habits have to be better. It's really, really hard for them. And I think we'll take that step because of the stuff we learned the last 2 years, the hardships we went through, and I think they're good character kids, so they'll find their way to manipulate. They'll find their way to put their spin on what our group looks like.
There's a lot of nuance, isn't there? And I guess what I mean by that is, like, it's not black and white to say we always treat players a certain way. That you need to sort of read the room and appreciate where your group's at, and maybe just be mindful of where you're pushing and where you're pulling back a little bit.
It's so hard now. It's so hard that there there's so much information for them. They have so many people in their corner now. Like through the summer, we don't get to see them very often. Maybe once through the summer. We know they have a strength coach. We know they have skills coaches. We know they have guys showing them video stuff, and it's just continuing to emphasize to them, right? The communication with us, like, hey, what are you doing in the summer? What's your skills coach got you doing? Sending them away at the end of the year with the right info. Hey, here's 5 or 6 things I really want you to work on. And I want you to have these conversations with your skills coach. Like, hey, Al Letang in Sarnia expects me to come back being able to do this. I got to protect pucks on the wall. So if I'm going out to your practice and you have me doing circles around all these pylons and putting stuff under the puck, I'm not going to be ready to play in Sarnia for the coach I have. I need to be doing some wall work. I need to be doing, getting pucks off a wall quickly, shooting to the net. So it's them taking stock and them taking a little bit more ownership in their development, because at the end of the day, they're investing in themselves. If they're going to go grab all these skills coaches, they should be able to find ways for to help them individually within that group that they're skating with.
Totally. You mentioned some of the young prospects on your team that are up for the draft. I'd be curious, where were you, or how did you learn that you were drafted by the Montreal Canadiens?
I actually went to the draft. The
Where was it?
expectation, it was in Quebec City.
Oh, no way. What a great spot.
Probably the nicest spot, right to the Dago bar, and
Yeah.
I was able to have a quick beer and not worry about the age limit with my parents. So I went to the draft anyways because it was just such an experience.
Yeah.
I didn't have any interviews, so I wasn't expecting a whole lot. I knew where I was kind of ranked. I had some people tell me there was some interest. I went to kind of support some of my teammates, Larry Corville and some other guys that I played with. And we were sitting there. My dad was a huge Boston Bruins fan too, so it
No
it
way. Oh
it,
my God.
it kind of hurt him a little bit that Montreal was the team that took me. Funny story, we went back home after the draft, and there was a whole bunch of lawn signs of all the Montreal Canadiens on his front yard from all his buddies that
No way.
were teasing him. Yeah. So we're at
That's
the
amazing.
draft, and I was just talking to some people around me, and I didn't even hear my name called. And my dad and my mom had to tap me on the shoulder and be like, I think they called your name. And I listened again, and that was when you had to walk down the stands and you went around the back and just went to meet the table. So I got there, and everyone at the table just starts talking French to me, and I have a Letang is a French name, but I don't have a lot of French, so I'm thinking they drafted me because they thought I was a French player, but and then realized later that maybe I wasn't. But great experience in Montreal, great people around me. My first camp with Lyle Odeline and Patrick Waugh in the net was amazing.
I bet. I
Yeah.
bet. You had stints in the National Hockey League, I think with three or four different organizations. And, it's funny in the nature or in the time that we've done this show and you have these conversations, it's pretty clear that uh, your playing bio seems to translate more into to coaching. Like we don't have a lot of, and I say this with all due respect, but like we don't have a
Hmm.
lot of Hall of Famers that get into
No.
coaching. And
Yes.
so I'd be curious, like just your experience of being somebody that I'm sure was very mindful of the details in their own game. What about your playing experiences maybe really transitioned and set you up for success in coaching?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think with my elite prospects, yeah, I have to scroll down a little bit because there's so many different organizations going to Europe. But I think the biggest thing was appreciating the hard work. I was a player that worked really hard. I was kind of the leader of the team that kind of led by example, showed up every day, worked hard in practice, did a lot of off ice stuff. There was actually guys that are like, why are you going to the gym after practice, or why are you going before practice? And I'm like, it's just what I do, and it's just the way I feel better for the game, kind of thing. So I appreciated the hard work. I knew getting into coaching when I first went to Owen Sound with Ryan McGill. It was just two of us on the staff. There was long hours. My family was still in Sarnia. I was in Owen Sound by myself up at a cottage. You get
No way.
snowed in, and you're cutting video. You're watching NHL games. You're trying to absorb as much information. So the hard work wasn't the hard part. I think it was the biggest thing was having the patience to check all the boxes you needed to check before you thought you were ready to move on. So after
Mm,
my first year in Owen Sound, Ryan McGill moves on to Vegas. Todd Gill
yeah.
gets hired, but during that hiring through the summer, Dale DeGray calls me, who I owe a ton of for my career getting started and moving forward. Calls me, says, "Hey Tanger, we're going to hire Todd McGill. You're coming back as the assistant." And Dale said this. He goes, "I just don't think you've checked enough boxes yet." But part of me is like, you know what? I'm ready. I just had a great season. I've done all this work. You want to jump these steps before you're really ready. And I learned more under Todd, and then I got that opportunity when Dale felt I was ready, and then my coaching career kind of mirrored the same thing. Like when the last year when I took over the World Junior team, I went from 3 years with that group being a eye in the sky, being a pre-scout coach, being a development coach during it. Had never really had that experience on the bench. A little bit of the Holenka experience I had, but that World Junior bench is intense and pressure, and I thought I was ready,
Especially when
and
you're wearing a maple leaf.
big time, big time. And I thought I knew I was ready. I prepared all well, but you don't really prepare until you're in those moments and then check that box and look back going, you know what? I could have done this a little different. I could have done that a little bit different. You learn, it is true that you learn more about your from your failures than you do from all the successes. So as a player, I learned to be patient, right? You
Yeah.
knew you were going to get that job. So I'm going to go in, I'm going to earn the coach's trust. I'm going to work hard to work my way up the lineup. Hopefully I get called up. Hopefully I can make that jump to the NHL. But I was never comfortable. I was always just trying to push. And I think that was the biggest lesson I never got comfortable as a player because I always knew there I was either going to move to another team if someone new came in, if someone younger came in. You go to Europe, your contract's only as good as if the team's successful or if you're producing. So, you were never really comfortable in your position. You never thought you were going to be there for 5, 6, 7, 8 years. And now we know what coaching's like, right? The shelf life of a coach is pretty up and down.
You know what though? It's well, a lot to unpack there. So I would say a
Yeah.
couple things. Like one, like I appreciate when you tell that story about Dale DeGray, like to pick up the phone and call you and say, "Hey," and I'm assuming he
Yeah.
knows that it's not the news you want to hear, but for him
Mhm.
to say, "Hey, you're not going to get the job, and here's why." I don't know how many conversations I had with coaches this off season, for example, at the best league in the world, and they're like, maybe the head coach got fired. They're like nobody's reached out to me. I have no idea
Mhm.
what's happening. I don't know if I'm
Yeah.
up for an interview. I don't, and it's just that uncertainty, in any other corporate walk of life just wouldn't be acceptable or wouldn't happen. So kudos to him for doing that. I'm curious, did in that moment, did he give you feedback and say, here's some areas I think you still need some experience in, or, maybe in hindsight, do you look back and say it's obvious now that I needed to go work in these areas to get that opportunity?
Yeah, he had just said it's the experience piece, right? I had the 1 year in Croatia as an assistant coach, decided to move back, family reasons, get the job in Owen Sound. The 1 year with Ryan McGill, learned a ton through him. We had a great team, lost in the conference finals. We had Suzuki and Gadjevich and a lot of great players. And that was a real eye opener for me. I was learning as much from them as I was from Ryan and how to interact, how to talk to them. And yeah, Dale just said, he goes, listen, we're bringing in Todd. He's got experience. He's coming from San Jose. He'll be great for you. You'll continue to learn. He says, you just need to be around a little bit more and experience and have those experiences. And then, 2 years with Todd, and then just before COVID was the year I got the opportunity. And you still are like, ooh, okay, here we go. And you get back into it and you get your feet wet. And it was really good. He was real honest with me and always, always, always so helpful.
Well, and then going to the part about, you mentioned as a player where there's that uncertainty, and, gosh, I mean, I have a lot of empathy for folks in your profession, because what people don't see is there's kids, there's families, there's like, this uncertainty doesn't just affect one person, it affects a lot of people. But, I can remember, when I first got involved in coaching junior hockey, if a player maybe wasn't playing up to snuff, like there was conversations in the coaching room. It's like, Alan's getting too comfortable. Like, let's go make him
Mhm.
uncomfortable. Let's tell him we're going to trade him or do like something
Yeah.
terrible. And then he'll play, then he'll play better. Right. Well,
Yeah.
and that was legitimately a strategy, right? It was a
Mhm.
motivational tactic. And I think that, I mean, I don't know about you, but like having kids, at times makes me cringe on how maybe I would have handled things in the past, because I'm like, gosh, I've never wanted anybody to treat my boys that way. But what have we learned about, or maybe you learned to say, hey, like, we're going to keep players safe. Like, that's going to, like, keeping them safe and feeling like they can stumble and get back up as part of the strategy to bring out their best.
So important. Like you said, it was always, our era was you didn't even want the coach to talk to you because you knew it was going to
Yeah.
be not right. So as long as he wasn't talking to you, you're like, I think I'm good. I'm playing a little bit. He's not
Yeah.
coming at me. When he wants to talk to you, you're like, okay, here we go. I'm gonna get a little bit. But I think it's the communication piece with these kids. It's, if first and foremost, how much is going on in their life. They're coming to junior hockey at 16, 17, right? New billets, new families to live with, new school they've got to get together with, social media stuff, right? A small town, bigger town, London, Sarnia, um, you know, getting accustomed to surroundings, Um, and then coming in with all those pressures. So if their game's not going for a little bit, it's like maybe we bring them in, and the first thing we say is, "Hey, how's everything at your billets? How's everything at home? Is school? Are you getting a lot of? Are you taking a big course load? Because we've got some kids that take a pretty heavy course load and still play junior. So it's like, hey, how's your courses? Do you need a tutor? Is it are you is there lots of pressure from marks? Are you maybe you're failing a class and you're so worried about it, and your parents are on you because you're not passing it. And it's like, is there a distraction away from the ring? Then it's like, okay, if it's none of that, it's like, okay, go back to what's your foundation as a player? What do you bring when you're playing really well? What are three things you do every time? And I bet you one of those three things they say, I could quickly show them in video saying, hey, look, you're not moving your feet here, or you're not protecting the puck
Yeah.
here, or if you're a goal scorer, you only had two shots last night. Why are you not shooting the puck more? That's how you have to score goals, or right, you're not creating enough turnovers if you're a playmaker. So there's a lot of avenues or a lot of ways you can do it without just hammering on them. Hey, you're not working hard enough. You're not competing enough. You're not in good enough shape. It's probably something else that's you've got to kind of dive and eliminate with, and hopefully they come to it in through the conversations. They're like, you know what, you're right. I'm not moving my feet, or you know what, I got to get to the net more because that's where I score most of my goals. And then and they kind of solve the problem for themselves.
Totally. And it's funny you mentioned like just the stuff going on away from the rink. This summer, just traveling on a vacation, just like bumped into somebody that's a billet um, in major junior,
Hmm.
and you just connect over hockey, you start talking, and I left that conversation, and this has been something we've talked about here at the coaches side. I'm like, there'd be a lot of insights coaches could gain to hear a billet's perspective of the conversations they have at their table when things aren't going wrong, and like, because obviously the kids are just totally transparent with them, and but again, they're asking the same kind of questions you just alluded to, where it's not the hockey stuff, it's checking in on kind of all those other metrics to make sure there's nothing going on. um when you make that transition to becoming a head coach, it's done. I think it was the end of January in your third season as an assistant in Owen Sound. I sense when anybody that's coaching, when they think about, hey, when I get that opportunity eventually, in their mind, it's probably played out. I'm gonna have an off season. I'm gonna have a training camp. I'm gonna probably create some cool PowerPoint, some video. It's not like, hey, I'm gonna show up to the rink one day and I'm going to get the keys
Hmm.
and have to adapt. How did you handle, because you were intern too, you weren't named the official head coach, so it was almost a bit of a trial. Like, how did you internalize that and manage that back half of the season?
Yeah, I think it was just that here's your opportunity. Here's what we've kind of been preparing for. The nice thing was I wasn't going to a team where I completely didn't know anybody. I knew the group. I had my ideas of why we were struggling. Um, Funny enough, I reference uh, I reference my wife quite a bit, Christy. She's always sending me texts between periods
No
on
way.
stuff to do. So she gets a good handle. So she's an ironing board for me. So when I get the job, I call her. I'm like, okay, I got to have an opening meeting. Here's some of the stuff I want to talk about. Here's what I want to do, and she kind of gets a chance to direct me a little bit that way because she's been right by my side the whole time when I was a player. Traveling all over Europe. So she's
Yeah.
been in it, and she gets it from the outside, right? So then we get into Owen Sound, season gets started, and obviously COVID happens pretty quick. And then now you're coaching remotely because we're going through the summer. We're not sure when we're going back, when we're not. So now you're setting up Zooms. You're trying to do little presentations in case we play, and you're trying to manipulate the not the Skype, but the Zoom and all the stuff that you have to do online. We did a Hockey Canada training camp online that was interesting to do, and fun. But it's just the belief that you've prepared, belief that you've put the work in. And like Dale said, I checked enough boxes. I felt confident going into that group, mainly because I knew who I could trust. I knew who I could lean on as players. I could go in there and talk to Hancock. I could go in there and talk to Jacob Friend and be like, hey, okay, this is going to be a process, but I'm going to lean on you guys to get my message across.
Love that. Did you just refer to your wife Christy as an ironing board?
I think I did.
And I want to read into the analogy. That means we're
Yeah.
help you smooth things out. Is
She
that the
definitely helped me smooth things out. Yes.
I
Yeah.
you know what and I mean I relate so much to that, and I think that one thing we're seeing in the coaching profession is I've got an executive coach, for example, and it's really helpful, I find. And I feel a lot of coaches that, whether it's their partner, their spouse, perhaps somebody external, but just the value of having somebody that can at times um, call you on your bullshit and tell you when you're not being your best self, and but also perhaps tell you when, hey, like, you're not getting the results, but you're doing it the right way. Like, stick with it. And not that you don't always get that from your staff, but it having someone that's maybe in your corner,
Yeah.
external from the room.
Big time. And it just gives you a chance to even take a step away, right? Like you come back from the rink and you want to just dive right back into video, or the whole night all you're doing is thinking about how things went wrong or
Yeah.
whatever. And then she's like, hey, she's just there, and you're just like, okay, I can put it aside for a little bit, or there's a little bit of nice friendly advice. And like you said, it's really, really important. I don't think you can be successful, or I couldn't be successful without my family's support, because it was hard. Like, I was in Europe for 2 years with them in Sarnia, and I'm missing what
Oh,
my kids
really?
are doing. Yeah, I'm
Wow.
in Owen Sound by myself because they're going to school, right? She's taking them to AAA practice. She's working, doing all this stuff, and I'm sitting at a cottage doing video, and I get to go to the rink every day and interact with these kids and skate with these kids and teach these kids, and I know what she's going through. And without that, I don't stay in Owen Sound that long. Like, if she ever made the phone call being like, "You got to come back, we can't do this," I'm probably not coaching in Owen Sound, and then who knows how my path goes. I was fortunate enough to get the opportunity to coach in Sarnia, which is our hometown, and I'm fortunate for that. But right, she's been with me every step and supported me every step, because as a hockey player, you're a little bit selfish because you get to take naps and she takes the kids away, and you're worried through the summer. Hey, I got to train. I got to go do this. So you get your pockets of hours, and she's the one left dealing with all this stuff. But she's been a huge, huge factor in what's got me to where I am today.
Well, I wrote down ironing board. I love that, and I can attest that my wife is not empathetic if she catches me taking a nap. So
I
I
do
can,
my own ironing though.
yeah. I feel it's funny. It's funny. My mother in law, when I first started dating my wife, she's like, we were over there for going somewhere. She's like, wow. She's like, you're really good at ironing, and I'm like, well, that's one of the benefits of like playing hockey and all that. You figure that out at a young
Yeah.
age.
Yes, you do.
Um, I'm curious. So, you mentioned you wrap your career up in Croatia, and if I'm correct, the team when you started there, you finished in the KHL, but you didn't start in the KHL. What league were you in initially?
We were in the Austrian league at that moment. They were a new team that joined the Austrian league. It was the Erste Bank League, so there was a chunk
Yes,
of teams in Austria. There was two Slovenian teams, and
an
there was
Italian from
one team.
Bolzano, I
Yeah,
think.
yeah. Bolzano was there, and then we had a team in Budapest, in Alba Volyn, so in Hungary, was the other team. So it was a league where you got to travel a little bit. We were there, I think, 4 or 5 years, and then the KHL. Came on board, and I was kind of near the end of my career, and that was when it kind of started to shift a little bit, because I'm 37, 36, 37, and now we're heading, the league's getting ramped up to probably arguably one of the top three leagues in after the NHL, right? You've got the American League, you've got maybe the couple of the other leagues, but the KHL was pretty high at that point. So now I'm like, oh boy, this is really challenging me at 37 years old to train through the summer, prepare for all that, and still be. I was there for 6 years. I was the captain of that team. Mark French comes in as the head coach, and he knows that I'm kind of transitioning probably out of my career if I'm gonna play in the KHL. If I want to go to Italy, or if I want to go to the second league, I could probably
Yeah.
still play. And he's like, listen, like, I think you can still play, but can you be a captain and maybe be in and out of the lineup? And I was like, yeah, 100%. I've been here for 5 6
No
years. I
way.
love this place. I want to see this thing through, because that was the dream of our ownership in Zagreb the whole time, was to just kind of get this group to the KHL.
There's a couple that I've heard from a few people that like just the crowd and atmosphere and support there was just unbelievable and a great facility. I think you guys had a new rink. I'm not sure if you had it when you first got there, but I think when they got to the KHL, they had a new barn. I'd also be curious, totally unrelated to hockey, to get your opinion on this. So when I was coaching in Penticton, our radio play-by-play guy Ryan Pinder, who's become one of my best pals, he does the Barn Burner podcast for the Flames and was on Sportsnet. Anyways, so he would sit behind me on the bench, as you do. You know, a lot of long bus trips, not like the OHL. We actually in Western Canada, you got to like really
Yeah.
travel for hockey games. And so we got on this road of like, what would we do if we were, we're trying to chase this career in hockey. He's like, what would we do if this doesn't work out? So we'd bounce a bunch of ideas off each other. The idea we felt really had some legs is that if we ever got out of hockey, we were going to open up a hostel in Croatia on the
Nice.
coast. And so, just really curious takes on that venture. Would that have any legs?
Oh, that would be a beautiful spot to be working for sure. One of my
Yeah,
regrets is not when, because I ended up getting citizenship and I ended up really
I
being
saw
a
that.
part of the culture there, which they were amazing to myself and my family. And I played with the national team for a couple of years, coached it a
So
couple of
cool.
years. Would love to go back and still be a part of it. Keep in contact with a lot of those people. Very friendly people. The coast was beautiful. I regret not trying to find something, an apartment or something there that I could always have ties to and go back to. But I, 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 I wouldn't change my journey going there one bit, because when I got the call to go there from Doug Bradley, who was a former GM of mine, I was like, Croatia. Like, if I go play hockey in Croatia, it's only a matter of a year or two and I'm not playing hockey anymore. Who plays hockey in Croatia? I was thinking I was going DEL. I think I was going to do something else. And, we took a leap of faith and it turned out unbelievable. I loved my time there. Probably the most fun I've had playing hockey.
That is so cool. And so when you do get that opportunity to be the team captain, but also from what I gather, you started in that role as the team captain, as sort of the senior person on the
Mhm.
room. And then you transition to being kind of an assistant coach player to assistant coach. Maybe just to start off with, like I looked at your roster and I was like, shit, like you had, I, it might have, I'm sure your locker room must have sounded like the UN between periods, just with the amount of languages being spoken. Obviously the culture there is very different. Like, how did you learn to lead? Because I can only imagine it's different in that environment than, let's say, if you're, in the National Hockey League or another level.
Yeah, it was, like I said, lots, like you said, lots of different cultures, lots of different language barriers. Some of the Croatians, some of the Slovenians don't really get along very well, but they can tolerate each other a little bit. I learned early on in when I went to Germany when I was really young. I watched a couple of the older guys, Mark Gregg, in Hamburg, how they interacted. They didn't just. It's so easy when you go over there. You have five. We had seven at the time, I think, in the DEL imports. And it's so easy coming from North America. You just gravitate to the North Americans. The Germans just gravitate to themselves. And that's your dress rooms kind of got those two groups that kind of interact. And then when you go on the ice, you just try and kind of play together. Well, I learned that, I watched at a young age a couple of the older guys, they'd go up to the front of the bus and they just sit with the Germans, and they'd try and learn a few words in German, and most of them could speak enough English to have a little bit of a conversation, but they would just endear themselves a little bit more to those guys and
Yeah,
kind of try and bridge that gap. And I took that to Croatia with me. Like, if we had a get together, we were always having people over at our house. We would always invite them. They would come over. We'd try and immerse ourselves in the culture. We'd go out to restaurants, we'd invite them out, and we'd get to know their families and get to know their young kids. And we would bring our kids into the dressing room. And I was like, hey, bring your family around, bring them into the dressing room. This is a this
love
is a
that.
family atmosphere. And if we win together, if we play well together, we'll get to enjoy this together. So I think that was the biggest thing I took, was just making sure I understood their culture, I learned about it, and then I just endeared myself to them, their family, and then some of their friends.
That's awesome. What when you got into the coaching part, what were maybe, I guess, some of the challenges, or perhaps in the areas where you're like, huh, I never expected that this was part of the gig?
The challenging part when I was over there was going from player to coach,
I
was
bet.
trying to draw that line or cut those ties with all these guys you've had so much fun with. You know, you knew all their wives. My wife knew all their wives. It was trying to just find that little bit of separation where at some point I'm gonna have to have some
Yeah.
tough conversations with you. And now I've gone from being your teammate where I supported you the whole time to now I've got to help manage you or help, make some of those corrections. And now it's about us winning because my jobs are on the line. I know your jobs are on the line, and we're having those conversations as a coach. And I'm getting information. Hey, we might want to move this guy, or we're not going to re-sign this guy. And I'm like, well, that guy was one of my best friends for the last 3 years. How are we gonna manipulate this? How are we gonna deal with this? And it was just, I think it just became, we were so close from playing together. I think the honesty piece just stayed, and that was it. It was just the honest truth, and I think as a player, I would have respected that too, and I think the guys I had to talk to respected that enough.
Who might have been some of the coaches that you had as a player that, again, with the benefit of hindsight, you'd say, hey, like, kind of some of what they did shows up in what you're doing now in Sarnia, and maybe with that, like, at what point in your career did you start saying, hey, like, coaching might be a thing for me, so I'm going to start, I don't know, writing it down, or I'm going to start just having a way to start, proactively
Hmm.
stealing to
Yeah.
prepare for that.
I probably regret not doing that more often, because when I first started coaching, you're trying to think back of drills, and I'm like, I don't even remember any of the drills my coaches did. I only remember two or three that I just liked doing, and those were the flow drills, the easy ones that I didn't have to work too hard for. So I think it was more. Now I started asking coaches questions, and when I started to transition, but it was more that next year where I was playing a little bit, but I was coaching more. So I took it as, okay, if I'm going to play in and out and still kind of be that go between the coaches and the players, I've got to start paying attention a little bit more in practice, and paying attention to the details of the drill, because you can come up with 1,000 drills, and the drill's the drill, and it might look great, but it's the small details in that drill that become so important, because they're the ones that are game like, whether it's the stick on puck or gapping or getting inside the dots, whatever you do for your drill, it's those small details. So I started to understand those a little bit more, and I start to think, you know what, maybe if I would have paid a little bit more attention as a player, maybe that would have helped me improve a little bit more, and maybe I would have got a little bit higher. And now I appreciate all that stuff, right? I think moving forward, the first coach I ever had my last year junior, when Mark Hunter took over, really, really had an influence on me. Really, I really respected him. Him and Dale have been a massive supporter of me right from day one when I first met them, and their loyalty to me has been amazing, and I owe a thank you to them every time I see them. And I also apologize to them, because I'm like, Mark, I don't know how you dealt with me, because I was out all the time. I was dragging other team players out all the time at 19 in Sarnia. I said, no wonder our team barely made the playoffs. And he always tells the story. He goes, you guys were unruly. I couldn't control you guys. He just starts
No
laughing.
kidding.
Yeah, but then I get the chance to coach with Dale at the World Juniors. I see Mark all the time at the rinks. He comes over and talks, and we tell old stories. And then now I move into Owen Sound. Ryan McGill was probably the second coach that had the biggest influence on me. And coming in my situation, it was just the two of us. He had had a coach before that was living away from his family, and it being hard, at nights he would want to go see his family, and then some of his work wasn't getting done. So I do the interview with Ryan and Dale, um, and they're I don't hear back for a couple days, and I'm like, oh, maybe I just didn't get it. I'll just, keep looking forward. Gordy Dwyer, who I knew from playing with, and I knew from coaching in Croatia, just gave me a quick call. He goes, hey, how did the interview go? I said, I thought the interview went great. I haven't heard for a couple days. He goes, well, I was talking to Ryan McGill. They were a little bit concerned that the you being away from your family was gonna take you away from the work you needed to do for Ryan because it was only the two of us. I was like, oh, really? I said, well, my wife is 100% committed to me chasing this dream. So I called him that night and I said, hey, Ryan, I know what's happened in the past from you. Trust me when I say this. My family is 100% behind me to let me do what I need to do in Owen Sound. And when I get a chance to come back, I'll come back. But if I'm in Owen Sound, you have 100% of me, 100% of my work ethic. I want to learn. And he says, that's good enough for me. And then Dale called me like an hour later and says, you have the job. So, and then he let me go right
No
from there.
way.
He knew my experience. I didn't have a ton of experience in coaching, but he would just sit beside me when I did presentations in front of the team. He would whisper little things that if I missed a small detail, but he let me make mistakes. He pushed me to be better, and that's exactly what I needed. I needed to get out of that comfort. Like he could have just taken over every PK meeting. He could have just, ran all the meetings, but he forced me to do all that stuff, and that's what started me really loving what I'm doing now.
No kidding. And I mean, just that with the fact that, we talk about this a lot on the show, just in terms of how many coaches, really well known coaches, for example, start on the East Coast League, and they're like, yeah, like I had to book the bus, I had to do the meals, I had to make sure we had
Mhm.
enough sticks, like doing everything, like being in an environment like that in Owen Sound where it's like there's just two of you, and it's like, well, I don't have a choice but to delegate because
Mhm.
there's just nothing else to do. Like just being in that environment where you got to kind of sink or swim.
Yeah, very much so. And being allowed to do it, knowing that, you make a
Yeah.
few mistakes, he's going to help you correct it. He's going to challenge you to be better and be detailed, but you're not under the thumb constantly that, hey, you didn't do that right. You didn't do that. He let me go and fail. And then when we come back into the room, we talk about it. Like, hey, how'd that go? And yeah, it went good, but I missed a couple points I wanted to talk about. And he's like, yeah, those are the little details you got to get comfortable presenting in your PK video or in your 5-on-5 video. And then, but really good. If I brought a player in to do on a one-on-one when I ran the D, he was sitting at the desk beside me. He wouldn't say a word till that player left. And he's like, hey, you missed a couple of these points, or love the way you did that, or right? You could have kept it shorter, or video was this, but it's so helpful.
No kidding. Well, I mean, listen, talking about the Hunter brothers. So
Yeah,
you get the opportunity to be on the staff of Canada's World Junior team. So we're talking, this would have been in 2020.
yeah,
Um, and on that staff, Dale's the head coach. You're an assistant. The other assistant coach is Andre Tournier, who's now the head coach of Utah. Jason LaBarbera, who I played with in minor hockey. And then Mark Hunter's the general manager. I was just, again, poking around as you do, getting over these conversations. I was like, shit, like if you could be a fly on the wall in a coaches meeting, like
yeah.
that would be a pretty compelling room to be in. What do you recall? I mean, you guys ended up winning gold. Um, but what do you remember about just being in that environment and just where I'm sure there's just a lot of knowledge bouncing off each other at the same time.
Yeah, tons of knowledge. Hindsight, crazy, right? If you know where they were going to go, it would have been just really enjoy those conversations. But it was, I think it came back to they were so much in sync, and Dale loved to just sit in the coach's room or sit at the hotel and just talk hockey. It wasn't even if we talked about the Canada team. We talked about, you know, he's like, oh, Craig Berube in St. Louis, they do stuff this way. And then Andre's like, oh, my philosophy's this. And Mitch Love's like, well, in Saskatoon, we do this. And I'm just sitting here just absorbing it all. But that staff was so in sync. And if you remember that tournament, we hit so much adversity through that tournament. We lost bad to the Russians, and you know what it's like when Canada loses. That the world was crumbling down on us, but that coaching staff just stayed the course. They knew what they were teaching. They believed in the players they picked. They said, "We're just going to keep pounding on the details, keep pounding on the kids, alleviate the pressure from them, put the pressure all on our shoulders." And they didn't waver once. Like not once were if me and Mitch were sitting beside each other, not once did he say something negative about Dale's philosophy or Andre's philosophy. We never. It was just full support right from the start. And then Mark, right from the top, was always around in all those conversations. And we had Ryan Hamilton too, who was the mental performance coach. He was in Tampa, I think, at the time.
Yeah.
Amazing guy. He was right there with us, going, guys, like, we've got this. We've done the work. We've prepped. We know what these kids are capable of doing. We've pre-scouted everybody. Right. I'm driving across the country with Tom Rennie in the passenger seat, and we're going somewhere to scout the Russian team. We're going to somewhere to scout Sweden, and I'm like, I got Tom Rennie, the head of Hockey Canada here, and I'm just firing at questions at him like nonstop, and he's just sitting there like he's a friend of mine that I've known for 10 years, just telling old stories and talking about when he coached. And it was just absorbing so much info. And then, we get into the gold medal game, puck hits the camera, and it makes you realize you can only control so much as a coach. And teams that are winning teams, you need a little bit of puck luck sometimes to get you over that hump. But the biggest takeaway was we never wavered from our belief in what our message was.
So I want to focus on this, and I was going to ask you. So as you mentioned, you lose to Russia in the round robin, but you didn't just lose to Russia. You lost
Yeah, we
six
got
nothing.
we got handed. Yeah.
You got handed.
Yeah.
So and
And if
then
you remember, sorry to cut you off, remember Barrett Hayton forgot to take his helmet off during the anthem too, and so there was a
that's right.
massive storm about that too. And it was completely just they were so upset with how the loss, wasn't even thinking, sitting there with the national anthem helmet on, and it was just in that dressing room was just we didn't know what we were going on for a second.
I can only imagine, and I think for anybody that's listening, like outside of Canada, this conversation, like you need to understand something. Like it's like I struggle to think of another sporting event. The only thing that comes to mind would honestly be like the World Cup of soccer. Like there's that amount of pressure on those guys. That's the pressure we put on the coaching staff and players of Canada at the World Junior tournaments, for better or for worse. So you guys lose 6-0 to Russia, and you talk about Ryan McGill. Like, what were those conversations? Because I could see how easily it's you come after a game like that, and it's like, hey, like let's take a 180
Yeah.
here and go
Yeah.
in a different direction.
Yeah, we right away we got back to that hotel. We had a meal, and we kind of pushed all the not the distractions, but we pushed a lot of the brass away. So like some of the Hockey Canada guys, we just pushed them away, say, hey, just give us this meal as a staff and as the players. And as the meal was going, we went around to tables, and I'd sit down at another table with my dessert and just let the kids talk and talk about my thoughts of the game from up top. And then we had a conversation at the end, and Dale's like, guys, we're gonna go through a few things in the morning, but at the end of that meeting, we're pushing that game because it's not gonna define us when we get to the medal rounds. Like it's the quarterfinals, the semis, and the finals where we have to hit our stride. That's just a loss in the round robin. We're gonna get to the quarterfinals. So we would show a little of of this of the video we needed to show. We lost a little composure. We felt a little bit of the pressure. And they're like, guys, we wanted this adversity now. So if we do hit a tight game in the quarters or the semis or the gold medal game, we're capable of understanding and handling it. And again, we hit it again, and we show video now. There's a presentation that I've seen a few times with Hockey Canada where it shows right that last minute where Russia's on the power play. They're just pounding us. We're blocking shots. We go to flip the puck out. It hits the camera. They make the call that they make. The Russian bench is just losing their mind. They lost their composure in the last couple minutes, and we were able to finish the game off and win the gold medal. And that video gets
I'm looking at
shown
the game sheet
all the
right now
times.
as you explained this. It's so great.
Yeah, yeah,
Well, before that though, I wanted to ask you about this because you talk about maybe let's call it the composure as a staff or group of leaders that you demonstrated after the loss in the round robin to Russia. You play them in the gold medal game. Coming out of the second, you're down 2-1, and then they score. They go up 3-1, and then in the last uh, 10 minutes and 40 seconds, you guys score three unanswered. And I would just be curious, like, what's the conversation? And I think this is what I think is most fascinating about our game, or maybe specifically coaching. You would have had a conversation the second period, you're down by one, and it's probably like, we need one more shot. You have your strategy. In that 15-minute window, you don't always have the chance to say, what happens if they get the next one? Then what? Like, you kind of have to pick a lane. What was the I guess the rallying cry or belief to say, hey, like, we're down 3-1, we got to, and they put the, again, judging by the box score, I mean, they had 14 shots in the third period. Like, they definitely didn't fold.
No, they were coming. They were coming. I think the clear message was Andre, Mitch, and Dale. And if you look at their careers now and you see footage of them behind the bench, they never show any kind of panic, or they're just stoic. They've got their plan. They're giving their orders. They're doing their things. And I think I remember in that game, a puck comes over the boards, and you can see Andre just catch it so casually, and he holds it and he just tosses it back onto the ice. They didn't show any panic. They knew the message was go in, hey guys. We work for the next one. We're not going to get back in this game in the first 5 minutes. We need to get maybe a goal. We need to start tilting the ice with just some of our play, some pucks deep, right? Trying to create some turnovers. Maybe we draw a penalty. There's ways we can work our way back in without having to press to score. And I think I learned that a lot. A lot of times when you're down, you're like, hey guys, we got to press to score. We got to press to score. And that usually ends up you usually end up giving one the other way, and now you're 4-1 and you have no chance. I'm like, guys,
Yeah.
take the small wins. A puck in deep, a turnover, one scoring chance might lead to another one, or one scoring chance might lead to a penalty. Now our power play gets a chance to get on. Get on. Maybe you get a penalty. You're like, you know what? PK, build some momentum for us to try and get back into it. And that was the message as they went in, and it was just a calm demeanor from all three of them. Because I know upstairs we were not calm.
Yeah, no kidding. And then, fast forward, and well, it's so funny to talk about, like, the composure. And I would say that is, we've all seen the, highlights on, like, Sports Center, where it's like top 10 videos of coaches losing their marbles. And, like, you just don't see that anymore. And, like, Dale Hunter's a great example. Like, I watched him in the Memorial Cup this year. I'm like, he has a resting down by 2-1 face. It just never
Yes,
changes. Yeah.
never changes.
Yeah.
Never
He seems a
changes.
little
Yeah,
annoyed. He's never too happy, but, yeah, lots to be said for that.
for sure.
You come back as an assistant coach, um, and you guys have another dramatic win in overtime, where you have to come back. You talk about, there's a lot that we can learn from failure, and there's a lot we can learn from our players. But when you're in that environment, and I would just imagine when you're having a conversation with a young player now, where you can say, hey, you can reflect on those experiences with, some of the best junior players in the world, and say, like, I just think of Dylan Gunther, coming up big in overtime in a game where you had to come and you were down a few, and just maybe what do you learn from watching those kids and how they perform at that age, and what can you pay forward to some of your players today?
I think it's just the same thing for us is those kids when that pressure comes on, you've got to trust what your identity is as the player. So if Dylan Gunther's out there and that game's on the line, he's got to trust that when I get that opportunity on the power play, or I get that opportunity to shoot a puck, I'm going to shoot and score. It's no good for him to all of a sudden start panicking and running all over the ice to try and hit guys or create turnovers. It's I'm just going to continue to play, and when that pressure continues to mount, it's the belief that we'll put you in the right spots that hopefully allow you to have that success, right? Whether we manipulate the lines, whether we get you away from maybe another line. And that's where the fun part of the strategy of coaching is how do I use his assets to get our group back in there, right? And we had a lot of players we could lean on that year in Halifax, right? From Bedard to Stankoven to Zellwigers and stuff like that. And it was just believing that if we get them in the right spots and the right opportunity, they're going to come through in the clutch.
I imagine, the word trust gets thrown around, a lot in our game now, and that's good. But I think what you just described there is a great way to frame it. It's players knowing that they can go out there and be themselves and know that you're going to put them in positions to be themselves. And if you get that, then you might get a little bit of magic.
You do.
You get your opportunity to be the head coach of Team Canada. I've never, I don't think I've ever asked anybody this before that's had that experience, but like, how do you, I mean, obviously Hockey Canada is not, putting the head coaching role in the white pages. Like, how do you go about, do you apply for that? Do they maybe get a short list and then interview? Like, what does that process look like?
Yeah, it's usually they'll send they usually send a questionnaire out to, I believe, all the CHL teams. Usually I get it through my GM Dylan here. I got it through Dale. Dale was really the one that pushed me to start doing it. Like I was my first year in Owen Sound, he pushed me to be like a guest coach at U17, go to the Hockey Canada events, which was invaluable. And I do the same now. I tell all my assistants, I'm like, hey, just apply and go. And if they tell you you're a guest coach, go for the weekend at U17, get to know everybody, learn that experience, learn the players that are around. So I started that way, and then you fill out the survey, you get a response that, hey, maybe a quick little interview. A lot of times, if you've been in the program a little bit, you kind of start here and you kind of just work your way through the program. Guest coach, then maybe you're an assistant with U17, then maybe you're a head with U17, then maybe you move to U18 as an assistant, then you move as the head, and it's usually that process. I actually got lucky, or I don't know if it was just kind of the time period, if there wasn't a lot of coaches doing it. I kind of jumped a little bit when I never got involved in the U17 program as a coach. It was more just the guest coach. Then I jumped to the U18. Dennis Williams, I think, had a lot of influence on that because I worked with him at the when he had the Holenka team. I was one of his guest coaches and really sat with him and really picked his brain. And he was big and instrumental on getting me on the Halifax staff. So another great coach that I've learned a ton for, and he calls me all the time. And when I know he calls me, we talk hockey for probably 2 hours. I know it's going to be a long conversation, but it was just the interview process, and you go through those processes. And um, the year I got the head was a little bit of a strange season where there was uncertainty around who the staff was going to be, and it was a little bit later getting into when the staff was kind of announced, and we felt, and no excuses, but we felt a little rushed to try and put stuff together a little bit. But I think we had the team there, and I think if I look back, there was opportunities through the training camp. There was opportunities early on where my gut told me to do this, and I defaulted to do something that maybe the majority wanted. And I said to my wife, and I said to myself, that's the second time I'd never trusted my gut, and I should have trusted my gut that way. And then if it didn't work out, at least I could look back going, you know what? I went with what I thought was right, and I think that was the biggest takeaway from that World Juniors in Sweden. Um,
Do you think though that that's probably I just as you say that, I mean, yours, that lesson is learned on a pretty big stage, as we've
yeah,
acknowledged, but I just sense that lesson gets learned by every accomplished coach, and it probably doesn't, it never feels good in the moment, but I just sense that that's something that everybody goes through because, I've certainly learned this that, all of us, that, leadership's a lonely place, and you do get pulled in a lot of directions, and that takes, that conviction. It's a muscle. I'm not convinced that it's just something that you inherently have.
yeah. No, I agree. And like I said, it was I had a great staff. Corey and Gilles Bouchard, they were great staff, and we knew what we wanted to do. We knew what we wanted to accomplish. It was just some small things early on, and we always throw the word culture around and all that stuff, and it's so hard to pinpoint what a great culture is, because I played on teams where I thought the culture was unbelievable. We didn't win anything, and I played
Yeah.
on a few teams where the culture was just okay. We weren't super close, or we did this, but we just found ways to win, or we had a couple talented players that got us kind of over the hump. So we have these conversations every summer with my staff, and like, what is culture and how do we do it? Obviously, it's the standards you want, but I think a lot of it has to do with how that group organically finds their way and their identity. Like we can have buzzwords all the time, but if the buzzwords don't mean something to them, then not really fully invested in the buzzword. So early on, there was a couple moments where I thought I could really impact the culture. And again, like I said, it wasn't anyone's, it was my own fault for not trusting my gut. And that's the biggest thing I learned. So now when I do stuff or I see something that I know I should stay on top of, or I see something where, hey, this is a great time to send a message or have a lesson in learning, or I stop myself right away and I make sure I get to it. And that's,
Yeah,
like I said, the biggest takeaway I took from that. And at the end of the day, we were that close to getting through that game the same way we did in the quarterfinals in
totally.
Halifax, right? Like it was just it. That tournament is so close. Those teams rush like the Czechs, the Swedes, the Finns, the Americans now, the Latvians. Like those countries have really, really closed the gap on in talent and in how they get up for Canada. It's such a fine margin now between winning and losing. Such a fine margin.
You know what it is, and you don't need a whole country. You need 20 people to make it run, and and I'm always, there's I always think of it this way too. And part of this is, we work with a lot of federations now, and it's really interesting to see how everybody does it a little bit differently. But the one thing that stands out to me is, sure, we've got a lot of players, but they probably don't play together until they maybe get to that tournament. And these other countries, these kids, if they're identified early, like they have a familiarity with each other, with the coaches. Like there's been a lot of FaceTime, and but it never ceased. I mean, the drama there is unbelievable, and I think we can all acknowledge 7 game series are a beautiful
Yeah,
thing for a reason. Um,
absolutely.
so you wake up now, you're a veteran coach in the OHL. What are some of the areas just personally that you look at and say, hey, maybe here's the next evolution of you within your craft?
Yeah, I think with the landscape change for us now, obviously with NCAA, how's this impacting our league? Are we getting a little bit younger? Do we have the ability now? Like even this year, we've brought in a couple 19-year-olds that would have never ever come to an OHL camp, and now it's those quick evaluations. I think my evolution is I've got to get out a little bit more. I've got to study some of the kids that I don't know from the USHL. I got to get involved a little bit more in the draft, a little bit more that way where I know our identity, I know what we want. Now I've got to help educate our scouts on what we need to look for because I'm really, really enjoy Sarnia so much, and I want to see this through. Like I kind of came here hoping to bring a winning culture and a championship here, and I want to be the one that sees that through. And I've got great support from my GM Dylan Sika. I've got massive support from Mark Guy and Leggy. We've gone through some ups and downs in this rebuild where an ownership group that potentially isn't as patient. Things could be a little bit different. So
Sure.
I think it's just continuing to put in that time and how do I help make everyone else in our organization a little bit better, or at least a little bit more on the same page, and they know what we're looking for. They know what the identity is of the club we want to play, and I think Mark and Dylan have done a great job identifying that now, and that's the next evolution. I've got a good staff in place that I can find a time where, you know what, I don't have to be at practice today because they can run it the exact same way I run it. I get to go watch some U16 hockey, or I get to go watch someone else and really see and really take a look at how these kids are playing and developing at that level and then moving forward that way.
Well, you know what? I can imagine there's just the story and journey that you've shared in the last hour here, like the opportunity to do that with an organization you played for, having your family under the same roof, and as you said, going through that rebuild and to see that come to fruition. I think that again, in particular in junior hockey, I just sense that, championships, they take years to put
They do.
together. And there's a lot of decisions, a lot of ups and downs. And as you said, patience is key. Last one, Alan, you were down, and I'm always curious about this. You were in Ann Arbor this year for TCS Live. What was, what was maybe your favorite presentation, or what was the thing you took away from that?
Ugh, so many good presentations. I went down when I saw the lineup. I went down because I haven't had a chance to connect with Mike Johnson forever. I was like, I go to a coaches
Oh,
conference
you played for
once.
him and Willie in
I
Team
played for
Canada.
him and
Right.
Willie with Team Canada. I've ran into Willie a few times at some of the NHL conferences. Greg Cronin coached me when I was in Bridgeport, and I was like, this is a great opportunity. I hadn't seen him forever. So I lost a little of those connections, and we know what this business is like. You've got to kind of keep a lot of those connections and kind of build those for down the road. And I talked about being a huge collaborator. Like we had the one social night. I sat with Mike the whole night and we just talked old stories about when Canada had the full-time national team and he was the coach. And I met Bill Ranford with him. So now I've met another connection. I think I loved Greg's presentation. I love the on ice presentation because you don't get that very often at the NHL camps, right? It's nice to see some of the skill development coaches. It's nice to see the stuff on the ice. I had never been to Ann Arbor, crazy enough from being from Sarnia. I'd never
Yeah,
gone
no
down
kidding.
there. What a beautiful little town. Like it was
Awesome.
such a great spot. I had so much fun. But it was the collaboration. It was the people that I hadn't seen forever that I got to see, I got to reconnect with. Now I'm continuing to talk with, I can share ideas with. That was the biggest thing for me, for sure.
Love that. Appreciate that, man. Well, hey, it was great to connect with you down there, and really appreciate you taking time. We know how busy this time of the year is, but best of luck to you, the Sting, as you guys embark on what's shaping up to be a great season.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much.